Home prices hit a record high in June. Prices rose 5.4% nationally in June compared to the previous year, according to the S&P CoreLogic Case-Shiller Index. The increase comes amid an ongoing housing shortage as high mortgage rates continue. The nation's housing deficit rose to 4.5 million in 2022, up from 4.3 million in 2021 per Zillow. Vice President Kamala Harris has tried to calm Americans, tweeting, quote, "Even if aspiring homeowners save for years, it's often still not enough. My administration will provide first-time home buyers with $25,000 to help with the down payments on a new home." To which Elon Musk responded, quote, "Unless you increase the supply of new homes, this just raises the price by $25K and does nothing for affordability."
Now, for many in the Black community, affordable housing has been a struggle with roots in inequitable policies. Federal policies in the 1930s created segregated communities with negative ripple effects still being felt today. The practice is commonly known as redlining, which targeted specific neighborhoods that would receive little or no government investment. These maps were based almost entirely on race, which led to a surge in predatory loans and unaffordable housing. Joining us now to discuss the latest in housing is author of Know Your Price, Valuing Black Lives and Property in America's Black Cities. And he's also the director of Brookings Center for Community Uplift and a professor of practice of economics at Washington University. Andre Perry, thank you for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, what we're experiencing right now over the past few years, we've seen investors make up about 30% of purchasing. How much of this is a true lack of supply when we have so many vacant units and vacant homes, but we're really seeing investors come in a predatory way, sometimes artificially raising the prices, making homes unaffordable? How much of this is more so driven by investor demand?
Well, a lot of my research looks at housing devaluation. In 2018, we measured the value of homes in Black communities compared to their white counterparts. And what we found is that homes in Black communities, and that's after controlling for education, crime, walkability, all those fancy Zillow metrics, we found that homes in Black communities are still underpriced by 23%, about 48,000 per home, cumulatively at about 156 billion in lost equity. But what that means is that you're getting a discount essentially in a Black neighborhood when you purchase a home. Investors know this, home buyers know this, and so they seek out to purchase homes in Black neighborhoods because when there's constrained supply, you go where homes are affordable. And right now, everyone's looking to Black neighborhoods, the neighborhoods that are close to the core of the city, and it's increasing demand. And then as soon as some of those homes are purchased, they rent or sell to a different demographic and raise the prices. So we and colloquially we hear that is gentrification, but it's not hard to see the basic principles in supply and demand at play. There's simply not enough homes in many neighborhoods across the US.
Well, and if there aren't enough homes, then, my question, what good is giving $25,000 to first-time home buyers? I mean, that's subsidizing demand. That's going to raise the demand for the limited, too limited, I would argue, a supply of housing, artificially limited by restrictions on development, NIMBY type stuff, the preference for single family dwelling units rather than large buildings with multifamily units. That kind of stuff is my preferred solution for increasing the housing supply and easing the housing tensions.
Well, you need both, and I think there are many programs currently out there that will allow to provide first-time home buyers and home buyers in general relief. We have special purpose credit programs that can be applied to reduce the amount of down payment used. So that's a tool. I think the point is you need both. You need to increase supply, and if there's an order to it, you want to increase supply first. But you also need to provide some relief because how discrimination shows up over time is a lack of down payment. A person's grandfather who could not own a home because of discrimination could not pass down that intergenerational wealth, and those families simply do not have enough down payment. So you do need both. I think in these debates right now, some people focus on the supply, some people focus on the down payment assistance. The correct way to look at it is you need both if you're going to increase home ownership equitably across the United States.
Now, I see a lot of people focusing on the supply of homes in the US. We've seen that there were 680.9 outstanding listings in December of 2022. That figure was 734.3 thousand at the end of April 2024. So we are seeing net positive new homes added to the market. We are seeing existing homes for sale. And despite this increase and this above average reading of new homes, for 8.3 months, much more than the regular 6 month norm. How are we seeing an increase of homes getting on the market, but we're still seeing prices going up? Like, are investors that make up 30% of home purchases crowding people out who would actually live in and use the homes that they're purchasing? Is this an affordability issue, or is it an
There,
investor crowding
no,
out
there are
families?
many things at play. Remember that when we look at these numbers, we often recite the numbers in the national aggregate. But housing markets are very specific. And so when you look at many of the hot housing markets, they are very constrained, largely by single family zoning ordinances and other restrictions that simply limit the amount of supply. And so any plan that moves forward, they're going to have to work with state and local housing authorities to change those sort of basic rules around how many units or what kind of homes you can put in a neighborhood, because there are many places that there's the space, and in some cases there's the inventory, but there's simply not an allowance for innovation in the housing markets to allow for condos and other ADUs and other ways to increase the amount of units in a place. So, yes, we are increasing the number of homes, but in some areas it's simply too constrained, which leads to an increase in pricing.
So how do we square that in a place like San Francisco, where there's an extreme housing constraints, but this is a city where in the city we're seeing 13 to 15% of homes vacant. I've seen a lot of these calculations done as, what's the amount of people typically purchasing homes in a generation based on previous, but we're not seeing incomes go up in a lot of these generations. Are you seeing, the lack of affordability driven by decreased incomes being a factor here?
Yeah, you raise a great point. We often talk about housing and remove income from the equation. When incomes don't rise, nothing is ever affordable. And so what we need to do, and in San Francisco in particular, you have very high incomes in a certain segment of the population, and you have income stagnation among other parts. If you're working in the tech sector, life is good. You can quote unquote afford that $1 million, 1,500 square foot home. If you are a teacher, a nurse, or a service worker, you simply can't afford it. And on top of that, the housing markets are constrained by single family zoning ordinances. And so, again, we need to change the ordinances. We need to make sure that everyday workers can afford to work and live in the same area. And we need to just increase supply. I mean, those are some heavy lifts. It sounds simple. Those are some heavy lifts, but it can be done. And we have had these kind of innovations in the 30s, with one major exception, that we increase the number of homeowners for white people, not necessarily for all. And so we need to go back to those kind of bold initiatives, but without the discriminatory aspects of it.
Do you see either candidate's policies addressing this and helping equalize this and have the Black community, so to speak, catch up?
I think both candidates have talked about increasing housing supply. I think where the rub is, the Republican candidates, at least some of the messaging that I've seen, somewhat supports the single family zoning ordinances and talks about, Trump infamously talked about their invading the suburbs and the like. And so, in that respect, you can't have it both ways. You can't say we're going to increase supply and not change the single family zoning ordinances that constrain it. And so I think in this regard, the Harris candidacy is more in line with what we need. Certainly, she does talk about increasing supply. She does talk about providing down payment assistance. So I think the targets are there, but I also think both candidates are talking about increased supply, but one is simply not addressing the constraining factors that go into that.
Andre Perry, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.